When you think of ancient Egypt, your mind instantly goes to the golden mask of Tutankhamun, the huge statues of Ramesses the Great, or the tragic beauty of Cleopatra. Popular history acts like a spotlight, highlighting only a few spectacular figures and leaving everyone else in the dark. But what if we told you the real architects of Egyptian civilization, the rulers who first achieved its greatest feats, brought it back from total collapse, and set up the famous eras, are names you rarely ever hear? For over 3,000 years, Egypt had more than 170 monarchs. Still, only a tiny handful are genuinely remembered. The figures we're exploring today are the forgotten pharaohs, the quiet game changers, the steadfast stabilizers, and the crucial bridge builders whose influence was arguably much deeper than that of their celebrated successors. Their stories aren't just about glory, they're about grit, sheer willpower, and smart political maneuvering. Our goal is to look past the shine of the new kingdom and the fame of the old, diving into the hidden corners where the empire's essential work actually happened. We're on the hunt for the true power that backed the famous dynasties. So why are these pharaohs forgotten? Sometimes it was an accident. Records simply lost to time. More often, it was intentional, a policy called damnatio memoriae, where a successor tried to wipe their predecessor from memory, often literally scratching their name off monuments. Yet, while stones and scrolls crumble, the foundational changes these forgotten kings put in place actually lasted. This documentary focuses on 4 core types of influence: the pioneer, the female bridge, the resistors, and the restorer. Let's start with the pharaoh who had to fail repeatedly to finally succeed, the real father of the Great Pyramids. Our journey starts deep in the Old Kingdom, right at the beginning of the 4th dynasty, around 2600 BC. This was when Egypt shifted from experimental nation building to a major architectural powerhouse. But before Khufu could even build the Great Pyramid, his father, Sneferu, had to figure out how. Sneferu's reign is best known for his relentless, costly, and sometimes embarrassing obsession with architecture. The very concept of the smooth-sided pyramid, Egypt's ultimate icon, was his passion. He pursued it through years of trial and error that spanned decades and required millions of man-hours. His first try, the pyramid at Midon, began as a step pyramid, but was later ambitiously converted into a true pyramid. The results were disastrous. The outer casing fell away, leaving the inner step core exposed. It was a humiliating failure of both engineering and material science, a massive, visible reminder of what not to do. Undeterred, Sneferu began his second pyramid at Dashur, the notorious bent pyramid. Halfway through the build, the construction teams realized the base was unstable and the angle was too steep, guaranteeing a collapse. In a panic, they drastically changed the angle of the upper sections, giving the pyramid its famously awkward-looking, bent look. This wasn't a design choice, it was an emergency fix. Still, it taught them a colossal lesson. The builders had finally discovered the maximum safe angle for such structures. Armed with this hard-earned knowledge, Sneferu started a third time, also in Dashur. This structure, the Red Pyramid, was a pure triumph. Built at a cautious, successful angle, it became the first true smooth-sided pyramid in Egyptian history. It wasn't as tall as Khufu's later work, But it was the prototype, the successful blueprint that made everything else possible. Beyond the stone, Sneferu completely overhauled the state so it could manage these huge projects. The pyramids demanded a sophisticated bureaucracy to handle resources, labor, and food distribution across the entire unified nation. Sneferu pulled power away from the local nobles and earned a reputation as a relatively benevolent and approachable king, a sharp contrast to the distant, godlike rulers of later dynasties. Stories highlight his humane leadership, a necessary trait for managing such huge construction programs without triggering a rebellion. His military actions, particularly into Nubia and Libya, were practical. They weren't focused on conquest, but on securing the essential resources and labor needed to feed his massive architectural appetite. Sneferu's reign wasn't just about building tombs, it was about building the state capable of building the tombs. Sneferu's legacy is often overshadowed by the sheer size of Khufu's Great Pyramid. But Khufu simply inherited a stable, organized nation and a proven plan. Without Sneferu's costly, decades-long experiments, the Giza Plateau would never have existed. He is the unrecognized structural genius whose breakthroughs transformed the pharaonic government forever. Moving on from the pioneering strength of the Old Kingdom, we arrive at a time of growing weakness, the end of the powerful 12th dynasty, Middle Kingdom, around 1800 BC. Here, a woman took the throne during a massive political upheaval. Sobekneferu was the final monarch of this great dynasty, and her rule, though brief, was a crucial act of stabilization. The 12th dynasty, which had seen Egypt reach its peak in art and literature, was failing due to internal pressure and the lack of a clear male heir. Sobekneferu, the daughter of Amenemhat III, was compelled to become ruler. This was not the era of the New Kingdom's powerful female regent, Hatshepsut. Female rule was highly unusual, yet she boldly took the title of Pharaoh. Her reign of roughly 4 years was a vital holding action. She is confirmed in the Turin Canon and left enough evidence to solidify her legitimacy. Sobekneferu didn't just rule, she asserted her authority by blending both female and male royal symbols into her official titles and statues. She was Pharaoh, and she made that claim unmistakably clear. Archaeological records show she continued her father's large building projects and actively strengthened royal authority at a time when local nobles, nomarchs, were becoming dangerously powerful. She was the final, desperate effort to maintain the centralized greatness of the Middle Kingdom before it completely dissolved into the Second Intermediate Period. Even though the Middle Kingdom collapsed shortly after her death, her ability to maintain stability for those 4 years stopped an immediate total catastrophe. She proved that a woman could hold the two lands together, a lesson later powerful leaders like Hatshepsut would benefit from indirectly. Sobekneferu stands as a solitary, determined figure, the vital bridge between Egypt's golden age and its darkest time.
The collapse after Sobekneferu's rule ushered in the terrible Second Intermediate Period, CC 1650 to 1550 BC. This was the low point when Egypt was divided, humiliated, and controlled by foreign invaders, the Hyksos. Yet, amidst this chaos, the foundation for Egypt's greatest empire, the New Kingdom, was laid by kings absolutely determined to fight back. These are the forgotten resistors. The breakdown was quick. Egyptian power fractured, and from the northeast, a foreign group called the Hyksos, meaning rulers of foreign lands, took control of Lower Egypt, establishing the 15th dynasty with their capital at Avaris. For a century, Egypt was essentially a vassal state, forced to pay tribute to foreigners. This humiliation was unprecedented and deeply impacted the Egyptian national spirit. The real flame of resistance burned in the south, in Thebes, where a line of native Egyptian rulers maintained a fragile independence as the 17th dynasty. They were small kings, dwarfed by the power of the Hyksos to the north, but they were the legitimate heirs to the kingdom. These forgotten pharaohs, figures like Sekenenre-Tao and Kamos, are the true heroes of this dark era. Sekenenre-Tao's life is proof of this resistance. His mummy shows clear evidence of a brutal, violent death, likely suffered while fighting the Hyksos. His injuries suggest he died leading his own troops. He built no pyramids. He was a martyr. He paid the ultimate price to defend the dream of a free Egypt. His son, Kamos, took up the fight. He was the most aggressive of the Theban resistors, realizing that survival meant conquering, not just existing. He launched a daring series of military campaigns, pushing north and capturing key Hyksos strongholds. Crucially, these pharaohs adopted the very military technology that had given the Hyksos their edge: the powerful composite bow and the horse-drawn war chariot. They weren't simply fighting a war, they were modernizing the Egyptian military machine. Kamos's campaigns proved that the foreigners were not unbeatable. He laid the essential groundwork for his successor, Ahmose I, often mistakenly credited as the sole founder, who would eventually expel the Hyksos and begin the new kingdom. The Theban resistors are often overlooked because their monuments were small and their kingdom was provincial. But their fierce nationalism, their willingness to die for the cause, and their tactical innovation are the real reasons the new kingdom, the age of Tutankhamun and Thutmose III, became so powerful. The empire was truly forged in the fire of their resistance.
Our final figure brings us to the height of Egyptian power, the 18th dynasty. But even at its peak, the empire was facing an identity crisis after the radical, heretical reign of Akhenaten and the subsequent short rule of Tutankhamun. The man who saved the new kingdom from administrative collapse was a commoner and a general, Horemheb. When Akhenaten died, his religious revolution, the sole worship of the sun disk Aten, left Egypt utterly chaotic. Monuments were vandalized, the state bureaucracy was ignored, and the main state religion of Amun was suppressed. Tutankhamun brought back the old gods, but he died young, leaving a shaky and politically complicated situation. Horemheb rose up from this mess. Horemheb was the generalissimo, the commander-in-chief of the Egyptian army, having served under both Akhenaten and Tutankhamun. He was an outsider with no direct royal blood, but he held the actual power. Upon claiming the throne, he was the only strong candidate capable of cleaning up the Amarna mess. His actions were ruthless yet effective. He systematically dismantled the monuments of Akhenaten and his followers, often recycling their stone blocks as simple filler in his own construction projects. This was more than revenge. It was an act of political and religious cleansing, designed to wipe the memory of the heresy from the land. Damnatio Memoriae in full force. Horemheb's most vital and lasting contribution was not military, but legal. He issued the Great Edict, a sweeping set of laws designed to eliminate corruption and restore order across the army, the temples, and the civil service. He punished officials who abused peasants, brought back fairness in taxation, and clearly defined judicial roles. His law codes stabilized the state apparatus, which had been paralyzed by the religious upheaval. He created the essential stability that allowed the Ramesside dynasty, Ramesses I, II, etc., to focus entirely on building a great empire rather than having to fix a broken government. Horemheb had no surviving children and deliberately chose his aging vizier, Ramesses I, as his successor. By doing this, he strategically ended the 18th dynasty and started the magnificent 19th dynasty, one of the most powerful and long-lasting in Egyptian history. Horemheb is the invisible foundation of the Ramesside era. He was the repairman, the restorer, whose unseen work made the later spectacle possible. We've journeyed through 1,500 years of Egyptian history, not following the flashiest lights, but the consistent glow of lasting influence. We've seen that the greatest civilization on Earth wasn't built only by golden kings and gods, but by the quiet struggles of a determined few. Sneferu, the engineer, who failed twice but ultimately succeeded in creating the blueprint. Sobek-Nefru, the queen, who desperately held the line against total chaos. The Theban resistors, the underdogs, who faced humiliation but fought back, mastering their enemies' weapons to spark a national revival. And Horemheb, the commoner who became the ultimate restorer of law and order. Their stories reflect a deep, universal truth. The most significant impact often comes from those who face massive adversity, work in the shadows, and lay the unseen groundwork for a better future. These forgotten pharaohs prove that the real heroes of history are often the ones whose names you have the hardest time finding on the grand monuments. The sands of Egypt hold countless more stories waiting to be told. Which other forgotten figures in history do you think deserve a deep dive? Let us know in the comments below. If you want to keep unearthing the mysteries of the past, please subscribe and turn on notifications.